What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I got something a little bit different for you. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has released its list of nominees for 2018. I figured I'd go through this, in a video and let you know my picks as I cast my vote here, let you guys kind of join in on my thought process here. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not the biggest deal in my mind. I feel like they've had quite a lot of glaring omissions over the years. For example, Deep Purple only got in 2 years ago, and they were eligible for quite a long time. Just seemed like an obvious band that should have been in, way before. Every guitar player ever, what's the first song you learn? Smoke on the Water. I feel like if you have that kind of clout as a band, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is the place to be. Looking through the list of inductees as well. Granted, there's a lot of good choices as well. Some people seem to have a problem when newer bands get in. But, I never saw a problem with, Nirvana getting in. I thought that was great. Green Day getting in 2015, I was cool with because I think they're a really great band, have some really huge albums. One of my favorite bands, personally. But, yeah, it seems like, they've been getting better over the years. I actually think that these picks are pretty good. It's definitely a little difficult to narrow down to just 5. You get to choose 5 nominees when you cast your vote. I think there's definitely a pretty good batch to choose from here, so we'll just get right into it. Obviously these picks are pretty subjective. They're what I personally would vote for. Not necessarily just going in on who's more popular or album sales or anything like that, though. It could play a factor, but we'll just get right into it. Number 1, I gotta go Judas Priest. They're one of my all-time favorite bands. I think, personally for me, it's really hard to pick favorite band because I listen to a lot of music. So in my mind, my favorite bands I would consider to be my all-time favorite, kind of go in tiers. And I think tier 1 for me is always going to be Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. Just growing up, those were 2 of my all-time favorites. I still listen to them all the time. Never really grew tired of them. I like that, we'll get more into Judas Priest because Maiden's not here. But, as far as Judas Priest goes, you have Rob Halford, who is one of the greatest metal vocalists of all time. If not the greatest. I think you could easily consider him the greatest. The band just has so many stellar albums. They've gone through many phases of their career where they've played around different sounds. You can go through any point in their career, whether it be the 70s, where they had kind of a more progressive, maybe, sound, into the 80s, where they had a harder rock sound. They got kind of into the glam arena with Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith. They were certainly touching on that, taking in that kind of 80s sound, but they're still very, heavy metal albums. They fully went into that with Turbo, but then, they came back out in the 90s with Painkiller and, just a really very heavy album, crazy vocal performances from Halford. And you can go through any of these, eras of their career and pick an album that is a quintessential Judas Priest album. Whether it be Stained Class in their earlier career, British Steel, which was their breakthrough in that sort of hard rock era, Screaming for Vengeance, Defenders of the Faith, Painkiller, all of these huge albums, and they came just at different stages of their career. Painkiller was decades into the career, and they showed that they still had a lot to say and a lot to offer as a band. Redeemer of Souls, their most recent album, I definitely really enjoyed. Looking forward to the new one that's going to come out either this year or next year. But yeah, definitely. As soon as I saw Judas Priest, they are a definite pick on here. Moving on. Speed this up a little bit so it's not too long. The MC5. I was excited to see them on here. I think they're definitely a good pick. If you haven't heard of them, definitely check them out. Probably the song people are most familiar with, Kick Out the Jams, always comes to mind when you think of them. They were they started in the 60s, and they were just so heavy and so in your face and so just punk rock and crazy. The way Kick Out the Jams starts as a song in the early 60s is pretty awesome and pretty rock and roll. That's what you should be going for here. Definitely a good pick. Probably going to be a bit of an underrated pick, but I think they were highly influential on a lot of bands, even just a lot of bands on this list. So I think they're definitely a good choice to go with for my number 2. The Zombies, I think another one that may be a little bit overlooked, but I think is definitely deserving of going in here. Just another very influential band. They weren't really on my radar until, I guess it was a couple years ago now, but it was an interview with Dave Grohl, actually, and I think he was talking about Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace, that album. And he said he just had the Zombies, Odyssey, and Oracle on repeat through the writing process of that album, and I really love that album, so I was definitely interested. Went to go listen to Odyssey and Oracle, and it's definitely just a phenomenal album. At its time, it was pretty overlooked, but I think over time, it has grown to garner a lot of attention. It's pretty critically acclaimed at this point. Just a very good psychedelic kind of band. So maybe some jazzy influences in there. Definitely some pop-like influences in there. Think more along the lines of the Beatles and things like that. They've just become eligible this year, so, for some bands I would say, give it time, whatever. But I think I am pretty comfortable going with Radiohead here. Just an extremely experimental band that, it always seemed to work out. They went from, your kind of typical, almost, alt-rock band in the 90s with their first 2 records to dropping OK Computer, which is just a sprawling sort of cinematic feeling album for me. It's definitely one of my favorite albums, one I definitely don't get tired of. Every song all the way through is just fantastic. And you started to hear them really expanding their sound, and then, ultimately they went into Kid A, where they totally threw everyone for a loop with the more electronic kind of sounds. And, I think they've just come out with very consistent albums since then, and, always, pushing the envelope and trying something a little different. I was going to say a fairly recent album, but it's not that recent. In Rainbows, oh my god, I feel kind of old now because that's 10 years old. But, just throughout the latter half of their career, I think, is just as good. So, they just became eligible, but I think I feel pretty comfortable casting my vote for them just because they're such a, influential and experimental and just a band that, is never afraid to push boundaries. And I think, I just gotta go Bon Jovi on this 5th one here. I'm surprised they're not in the Hall of Fame already. This is just one of those picks where it's like, how are they not in? They've been nominated twice. They only became eligible in 2008. That's not that long ago, I guess. Yeah, they're just a huge band. They have so many massive songs that everyone loves. They're a go-to karaoke band for most people, I would say. I'm not just saying because they're popular they should get in. I think they're popular for a reason. These songs resonate with people. And for me, they're never really a big albums band, and I'm an albums kind of person. They're more about the hits for me, but there's just so many of them, so many classic arena filling songs, and I just think it's definitely a good pick to put in there. I think they're a band that definitely, again, I'm surprised they're not in there already. I think they're deserving to go in. But yeah, I was pretty torn on some of these. There's definitely some good picks in here. Rage Against the Machine, that was cool to see them on here. I think they definitely are deserving to go in at one point or another. Depeche Mode is another good one. And Dire Straits as well. The Cars, I think they could all, will have a place in here at some point or another. But those are the 5 picks I'm going to go for. Just to reiterate, you got Judas Priest. I'm going to forget. You got Judas Priest, MC5, The Zombies, Radiohead, and Bon Jovi. These are the picks that I'm going to cast in a vote. Let me know in the comments who you guys are going to vote for. Definitely would like to see. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you like content like this where I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts on things, I definitely would be interested in doing some more stuff like that. So yeah, just let me know, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.